Do you know what makes the religion of spiritualism different from other religions? It's spirit communication. I am thankful for spiritualism and for a group of people that looked outside the box when spiritualism began. As spiritualists, we know that on March 31st, 1848, spirit communication was firmly established on this side of the veil. It was a demonstrated fact. These pioneers of spiritualism were able to demonstrate that spirit communication had come through, proving that a true and living spirit was connecting to the living. Now, of course, we know spirits have been communicating to the living for years prior to the start of modern spiritualism. Communication with spirits goes back to the beginning of human history, with the ancient shamans, the oracles of Delphi, healers, and those that they called witches. There is a difference, though, in style and approach from what we do today. As spiritualists of the modern day, we call that period of time ancient spiritualism. So ancient spiritualism was noticed by its reliance on priesthood and on superstition. As modern spiritualists, we said, no, we don't need superstition. We don't need a priest class of people. What we need is direct communication with the spirit side of life. So you might be asking, what is the benefit of spirit communication? Why do we do what we do? Spirit communication lessens the fear of death. It comforts us to know that we will continue in spirit form. When one of these days, this body will go away and shuffle off this mortal coil. Passing is eventual, and the body will retire through an unexpected event or easily when we're asleep. Let's face it, our gorgeous bodies will give out one day. But the thing that makes me, me, is my soul. Will continue living on as spirit forever and ever. This knowledge of continuity of life helps decrease the fear of death. There is only death of the physical body. It's just a doorway that we walk through from this world into the spirit world. There is a saying that just as the caterpillar apparently dies to become the butterfly, the body must die for the soul to soar where it needs to go. So that is the benefit of spirit communication. Spirit communication was established in ancient times, but those that had the gift to communicate with spirit were given an elevated status. They were given a status that says, these people can contact the spirit world, so they are special. Spirit communication was reserved for the priesthood only, the priesthood of some type of class of people. Modern spiritualism does not need a priesthood. We do not need a special class of people. What we need is direct communication with the spirit world. What we need is direct communication with the spirit world. Everybody has the ability to develop as a medium. That means all of us. You do not have to come from a specific family or caste or have a specific talent. You do need to be willing to put in the work. You too can talk to the spirit side of life. Each and every one here must have had instances where we know we have had contact with the spirit world. Now, you may not be ready to serve on the platform, but with proper training, you can do it if you want. Not everybody is going to develop their mediumship, and not everybody wants to develop their mediumship, and that's okay. On March 31st, 1848, we can pinpoint to the day and a place where modern spiritualism started. Picture it. In Hydesville, New York, on March 31st, 1848, we can pinpoint to a time where direct spirit communication happened, and we can point to a group of people where spirit communication happened. We can point to some mediums that experienced spirit communication, and we can point to a spirit who talked to regular people. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the start of modern spiritualism. It happened in a little family cottage in Hydesville, New York, which is really not there anymore. Hydesville was incorporated into the greater city of Rochester, New York. The cottage doesn't exist anymore. The land does, and the foundation of the cottage, where it once stood, is still there. And in a way, it is a special place for spiritualists. In that little cottage in 1848, there were 4 people at home, Mr. and Mrs. John Fox, and their 2 daughters, Kate and Maggie. That evening, they started to hear knocks on the walls, which they referred to as rappings. Kate replied to the rappings by saying out loud, "Mr. Splitfoot." Now, if you're not familiar with that term, that was a term used for the devil during that time. So Kate was a little more outgoing than the others and said, "Mr. Splitfoot, do as I do." And she clapped her hands twice. In return, the family heard 2 raps. They surmised that not only does this thing hear, it heard what Kate had to say. So now, Kate was made a motion of clapping twice with no sound. And what they heard in return was 2 raps. So now they knew that not only could this thing, they didn't know what it was, could hear, but it could also see. So Mrs. Fox ran to her neighbors. And that is what they did back then. If they were in trouble, or if they had an unusual experience happen to them, they would get their neighbors. And she gathered everyone that evening to her home. She wanted them to hear the rappings in their cottage. In the accounts of the time, it was said that the house shook with the force of the rappings. From this rapping communication, neighbors were given information that they had never divulged to anyone. Mrs. Fox asked how many children did she have, and it answered with 6 knocks, which were all the children she had, even counting the one that had passed during infancy. Through the rappings, it gave the ages of her 5 living children. Then, through a very basic communication, which usually involved 1 rap for no and 2 raps for yes, they developed a system of communication. Through the use of the alphabet, They were able to get names, location, and messages. Now I know what you're thinking, how tedious was that? Well, that was a time before cell phones, TVs, even radio, which keeps us entertained these days. The family and neighbors asked questions to find out who or what were communicating with them. They asked, do we have a spirit? 2 knocks were heard for a yes. Do we have a male spirit? 2 knocks were heard for a yes. What's your name? To get this information, they recited the alphabet until they heard a knock for the first letter of his name, eventually getting the full name of Charles B. Rosner through spirit communication. The process of knocking to get more information went on through the night, and they found out that the male spirit was murdered and buried in the cottage basement. Did anyone see that one coming? You can't talk to spirit unless someone has died. But spiritualism is not taken on blind faith. Proof has to come as well. A few days later, the family, with the help of their neighbors, went down to the basement and began to dig. And you know, back then, they just had earth, dirt floors in the basement, right? So when they began to dig, water was coming up. And there was too much water since it had rained recently. And the water prevented them to dig anymore. But later, spiritualists went back to the home site and dug up parts of the basement. They found a human skull and a peddler's sack, a peddler like a traveling salesman, peddler sack, right there where the spirit of Charles B. Rosner had said he was buried. And this peddler sack is on display at Lilydale in New York. And this is the proof. Spiritualism is not just a religion that believes because we say so. No, that is not what we are about. We are a science, a philosophy, and a religion. Through the religious part, we can talk about belief in the spirit world. Through the science part, we want evidence that can be proved, that spirit messages are accurate. And that's why mediums strive to gain evidence with spirit messages. So at the very beginning of our movement, evidence was demanded, not just a message. Spirit demanded that this evidence-based faith come through. So we can transition from ancient spiritualism, where there was a reliance on a priesthood or a special group of people that we have to go through to get spirit messages, to you can do it, you can do it, I can do it, we all can get messages from spirit. We are going to sit and get messages from spirit and offer evidence that we can prove. Do you see how the power shifted? It shifted from the institution to a regular person being able to talk to spirits. I encourage everyone, if they so choose, to pay attention to the subtle feelings or thoughts that come up when you're in a quiet place and hear the spirit message.